For guitar one, you're going to need two different guitar sounds, and the first is going to be sort of a gutsy, clean sound. For guitar one, you definitely want to use a Strat style guitar with the bridge and middle pickups on together, sort of selector switch 2 on a Strat. And the idea with the intro, of course, is you're doing that palm muted part with the ringing top notes. And you want to really set the amp for just enough breakup that you don't kind of lose that clean type of sound, but it sounds more rock and roll than just a clean guitar sound. So on this, I've got the gain up quite a bit, but this is actually the clean channel of the amp, so that doesn't really add too much gain. The treble's definitely up, and the mid-range is up. The bass is down, the presence is up, and the master volume is just the overall volume for the amp, so that doesn't really affect anything. So you want to really essentially get a bright Strat sound with just enough gain that it sort of sounds more rock and roll. When you switch to the solos, you really need to kick in a little more gain, and I'm switching to the other amp setting. And so for that, what I did there is I just switched to this drive channel, which is set up for obviously a heavier overdrive sound. I've still got a good amount of treble and mid-range. The bass is down. Not too much though, because you don't want to thin out the sound for sure, and the presence is up to really project it. I've got some reverb on. The settings for that are in the back of the amp as well. So if you go too heavy on the distortion, you lose the feel of the song as well, so don't set it too high. And that's the guitar 1 tones for Sweet Home Alabama.
Turn it up.
Sweet Home Alabama by Lynyrd Skynyrd. The song's in the key of D in standard tuning, and I'm going to play the intro riff. This is the Ed King Strat riff that everybody recognizes. So I'm going to play it in time and then break it down slowly. So really that intro, like most of the song, is really based on 3 chords. The first one's a D chord. And for most of this riff, actually for the entire riff, we're not really concerned with the first string, so you don't even really have to fret that second finger on the first string. So the D chord to a C add 9, which is the first finger on the second fret of the 4th string. And this note really isn't even necessary. You can actually mute the 4th string. The second finger on the 3rd fret of the 5th string. The 3rd finger is going to stay down on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, and my 4th finger's on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. So that's C add 9. And then just down to a G chord. So you're just simply moving the 1st and 2nd fingers down a string to strings 5 and 6. So you get D, C add 9, to G. So in the simplest sense, the song really, the majority of the song is just 2 beats of D, 2 beats of C add 9, to 4 beats or a full measure of G. So you could strum that and play most of the song. But as far as the intro riff is concerned, we're going to start with the D, and I'm palm muting the 4th string with my right hand. That's very important to really get that palm muted sound on that open 4th string that starts the riff. Then the 3rd fret on the 2nd string there, which is the D note, and the 2nd fret on the 3rd string, which is the A note. So you get, and then a little grace note pick on that 4th string, down to the C bass note for the C add 9 chord. And you're going to play the 5th string, you're going to play the 3rd fret, open and back to the 3rd fret. And that open on the 5th string happens so quickly that you almost don't perceive it. So you get, then moving up to the 2nd string again and the 3rd string. So you get, and then down to the G for the G chord. Same idea here, the 3rd to the open string and back to the 3rd fret. And this time just strumming the G chord, so slowly. Okay, and after that comes a riff, and what you're going to do is hammer the open 5th string to the 2nd fret, then play the open 4th string, and then pick the 2nd fret, pull off, back to the open 4th string, down to the 2nd fret of the 5th string, and then pull off the 2nd fret to the open on the 3rd string. And the idea is there to keep that 2nd finger down. So you get, again slowly. Back to the D chord. Back to the C. This time picking that 3rd string on the G at the end there. There's a cool riff here. You're going to play the open 4th string and pull off the 2nd fret to the open 3rd string. Back to the open 4th. Then the 4th fret pulled off to the open 3rd string, then to the open 4th. And then you're going to pick the 5th fret on the 3rd string and bend it up a whole step. It kind of gets a lot of artificial harmonics in that. That kind of sound where you've got the side of your thumb hitting with the pick at the same time. And it's back to the same part that we started with. And back to the D. In the very end, it's just simply a hammer on from the open 5th string to the 2nd fret, then the open 4th and the open 3rd string. So you get, and that leads you into the verse. So that's the intro for Sweet Home Alabama.
Big wheels keep on turning, carry me home to see my kin.
The verse is just an 8-measure chord sequence, and you're really just playing a 2-measure chord sequence 4 times. That's the best way to think about it. And that's going to be 2 beats of D, 2 beats of C, and 4 beats or full measure of G. For Ed King's guitar part, you're just strumming those patterns. There's going to be a couple fills in there, and actually it's the same fill played twice. I'll play the whole thing in time and then explain it. So again, that's just the D chord for 2 beats, C for 2 beats, to the G, and at the end of the first G chord that comes in on the 2nd measure, there's a little fill there where you're going to hammer from the open 5th string to the 2nd fret, then pick the open 4th and 3rd string, back to the open 4th, and then hammer the open 5th string to the 2nd fret. So you go back to the D, 2nd time around C, G. This time no fill. 3rd time, you're going to play the same fill. And the 4th time, no fill. So that's the first verse for the Ed King guitar part on Sweet Home Alabama. There's a little 4-bar tag between the 1st and 2nd verse, and this part really comes back in after the 2nd guitar solo as well. And the other guitars play a little bit of a fancier part. For this, really, on the Ed King guitar part, you're just playing the same D, C, and G. Simple strumming, twice. There's just that last little fill at the end there. You just go from the open 5th string, hammering to the 2nd fret, and then playing the open 4th string. So that's the first tag for the Ed King guitar part on Sweet Home Alabama.
Well, I heard Mr. Young sing about her. Well, I heard O'Neill put her down.
For the 2nd and 4th verse for Ed King's guitar part, you're pretty much doing exactly what you played in the 1st verse with the same fills and everything. There's just one fill at the very end that leads into the chorus. And I'm going to play the whole thing in time and then explain that fill slowly. So that starts with the fill starts on the third beat of the last measure. It's going to start with the 5th string open, hammered to the 2nd fret, and the open 4th and 3rd string. Then you're going to pull off from the 2nd fret to the open 4th string, and then hammer from the open to the 2nd fret on the 5th string. So again, and that leads right into the choruses. So that's the 2nd and 4th verses for the Ed King guitar part on Sweet Home Alabama.
Sweet home Alabama, where the skies are so blue.
I'm going to play the Ed King guitar part for the first chorus and then break it down slowly. So that starts with the D chord pattern, and this part is really based on a Chuck Berry style rhythm guitar pattern with 2 strings. I've got my first finger on the 5th fret of the 5th string, my 3rd finger on the 7th fret of the 4th string. And the idea is to strum 2 down strums, and then a down strum where I've brought the 4th finger now out to the 9th fret on the 4th string, and then an up strum where I lift the 4th finger off. So you get... And I want to point out also that it's critical to mute the strings that you're not intending to hear, because as you can see, I'm strumming more than just those 2 strings. So with the left hand, I've got my first finger barely touching the 6th string, and I've got my first finger across the top 3 strings, strings 1, 2, and 3. I get to strum all 6 strings and only hear the 4th and 5th string. So that's the D chord pattern. You're just going to move that back to the C chord. 3rd and 5th fret, and again the 4th finger's out at the 7th fret there on the 4th string. So that's now moving down to the G chord. The strumming changes a little bit with this. I've got the first finger now on the 3rd fret of the 6th string, and my 3rd finger on the 5th fret of the 5th string. So I get, and the idea with this one is I'm going to strum down, down, and then lift the pressure off, and get a down up strum in there with a mute. So I'm going mute, mute, and then coming back down with the 3rd fret and the 7th fret together, so on the 6th and 5th string. So that's down, down, mute, mute, down. And after that, there's a riff. I'm hammering from the open 5th string and using the first finger to hammer on to the 2nd fret, then hammering the open to the 2nd fret on the 4th string, pulling off, or you could pick that note. So, and then down to the 3rd fret, now on the 5th string with the index finger. So sliding that back up to the D chord, and then down to the C. And now at this point, the idea with that is you're just doing the hammer on from the 4th string to the 2nd fret and the open 3rd string. And that's obviously 3 notes that you're playing there, but since you're playing that in 16th notes, you're actually going to play that evenly in 16th notes, so it creates some cool accents. You're going to play that pattern 5 times in a row. And then do the slide again with the index finger from the 3rd fret to the 5th fret. Then the same riff that we had in the beginning there, the first fill, back to the D chord, to the C. And on these last 2 beats, it really goes to an F chord and a C chord in the other guitar parts, and that starts the first guitar solo at that point. So that's the first chorus for the Ed King guitar part on Sweet Home Alabama. I'm going to play the first guitar solo in time and then break it down for you. So that really is 5 different phrases. The first phrase is a bend from the 15th fret on the 1st string up a whole step. That's actually over the F chord on beat 3 of the end of that first chorus. And then you bring it down to the G on the 15th fret of the first string, and that's on the C chord. So down to the 14th fret of the first string, and then the 15th fret of the second string. That's where it resolves to the D chord. So that's going to be the first phrase. The second phrase is a little tricky. I'm going to play it slowly. So it starts with the 15th fret on the second string to the 14th fret of the third, 13th fret of the second string, and then the 15th to the 14th fret, a slide down with the third finger on the third string, then 12, 14 on the third string, to the 14th fret on the fourth string, to the 12th fret on the third string, then 12, 14 on the third string, to the 14th fret of the fourth string, and then a bend up from the 14th fret up a whole step on the third string. So again, slowly that's... And that's the second phrase. The third phrase is going to drop down to the 7th position on the guitar, and the fingering for this is going to be pretty critical. You're going to need to use the third finger to slide from the 7th to the 9th fret on the third string. So that phrase, I'm sliding the 7th to the 9th fret on the third string, and then 8, 10, 8 on the second string. Then I'm bending the 10th fret up a whole step on the second string. Then bringing it down to the 8th fret of the second string to the 7th fret of the third string. So that's the entire third phrase. The next phrase, the fourth phrase, you're going to go... So this is going to go from the 8th fret to the 9th fret on the third string, and then 8, 10 on the second string, down to the 9th fret of the third string, to the 8th fret of the second string, and then the 10th fret, you're going to bend up a half step and back on the second string, and resolve to the 8th fret on the second string. So that again is going to sound like this. And the very last phrase is tricky. You're going to slide from the third string, from the 9th fret, back to the 7th fret, and back to the 9th fret with the third finger. Then up to the 8th fret on the second string. So you get... And back to the 9th fret on the third string. Then slide from the 9th to the 10th fret and back on the 4th string. And then to the 10th fret of the 5th string with the pinky. And then the open 4th string. When you hit that, you dive with the bar. So you get... So slowly the whole thing... And that's the first guitar solo for Sweet Home Alabama.
Sweet home Alabama, where the skies are so blue.
For the second chorus, Ed King's guitar part is just doing exactly what it did in the first chorus. It's just that you're going to finish that last measure and stay on the G chord. So I'm just going to play it in time. And that's the second chorus for the Ed King guitar part on Sweet Home Alabama. I'm going to play the second guitar solo in time and then break it down. So that starts with a hammer-on from the 4th string to the 2nd fret on the 4th string, to the open 3rd string, back down to the 2nd fret on the 4th string, to the open 3rd, then the 2nd fret on the 3rd string 3 times. And that 3rd time on the 2nd fret, you're actually going to bend up a half step. So you get 2 more bends up a half step, and then a bend up a whole step that last time. Then down to the open 3rd string, down to the 2nd fret on the 4th, to the open 3rd string twice. So you get. The second phrase is going to start with a slide. The second finger has to slide from the 2nd to the 9th fret on the 3rd string. And then the first finger is going to play the 8th fret on the 2nd string. So you get. And that's 9, 8, 9, 8. Then you're going to bend the 10th fret with the A note on the 2nd string up a minor 3rd, which is the equivalent of 3 frets. So you're really bending this 10th fret up to what would sound like the 13th fret there, the C. So from an A to a C. Then you're going to bend that same note up a whole step, what would sound like a B. So you get. So that's just the 8th fret back on the 2nd string to 9 on the 3rd string. 8, 9, 8, 9, sliding down to the 7th fret on the 3rd string. And the end of that phrase is simply the 7th fret on the 3rd string to the 9th fret on the 4th, 9th fret on the 3rd to the 7th fret on the 3rd. So that whole phrase slowly is. Into the 3rd phrase. For the 3rd phrase, you're going to slide up to the 12th position. My second finger is going to slide from the 9th fret to the 14th fret on the 4th string, and my first finger is really going to cover the 12th fret, the G note on the 3rd string. The idea with this 3rd phrase, the entire 3rd phrase really is a series of pull-offs between the 14th, the 17th, and the 16th fret on the 3rd string, being pulled off to the 12th fret on the 3rd string, and then to the 14th fret on the 4th. So you get. So the very first part of that, the slide up to 14, 12 on the 3rd string, 14 on the 4th string, 12 on the 3rd string, and then a hammer-on and pull-off, 12, 14, 12, back to the 14th fret on the 4th string. So again. And then keeping the first finger down at the 12th fret, this is critical for this part, you're going to pull off from the 17th fret with the pinky to the 12th fret and back down to the 14th fret on the 4th string to the 12th fret on the 3rd. So you get. You're going to do that twice, and then just bring your 4th finger down to the 16th fret and do the same pull-off pattern. You're going to do this one at the 16th fret 6 times. So far we had the 14th fret 1 time, the 17th fret 2 times, and then the 16th fret 6 times. And then back down to the 14th fret pull off twice, to the 17th fret pull off 3 times, down to the 14th fret of the 4th string. So we've got. And that leads us into the 4th phrase. For the 4th phrase, you're obviously coming out of that 3rd phrase from the 12th fret on the 3rd string to the 14th fret on the 4th string. So into the 4th phrase, you're going to hammer from the 13th to the 14th fret on the 5th string. So back up to the 12th fret on the 3rd string, and then a slide from 14 down to 12 and back on the 4th string. So you get. To 12 on the 3rd, 14 on the 4th, 12 on the 3rd, 14 on the 3rd, 12 on the 2nd, 14 on the 3rd, 12, 15 on the 2nd, 12 on the 1st, 15 on the 2nd, and then a hammer on into the on the 1st string from 12 to 15. Just pick the 15th fret. When you hit that 13th fret that you're going to pick at the end of that phrase, you just bend it a little bit sharp. So we've got and that leads us into the 5th phrase. So the 5th phrase starts with the 12th fret on the 1st string, down to 15 on the 2nd string, back up to 12 on the 1st, and then you're going to bend the 15th fret on the 2nd string up a whole step, 12 on the 1st, bending again. So you're just repeating that bend 3 times from the 15th fret on the 2nd string to the 12th fret on the 1st string. So you get... And at the end of this part here, you're going to play the 12th to the 15th fret to the 12th fret on the 2nd string, back to 12 on the 1st string, and then bend the 15th fret on the 2nd string up a whole step. And at the end of that part right there where he's going 12, 15, 12, 12, 15, bend, there's actually an artificial harmonic that pops out on that 15th fret. And so for those, you're just kind of getting the skin of your thumb to hit with the edge of the pick in the right hand there. You can get different ones. And to me, it sounds like they're coming out by, randomly, which is a good thing in soloing, to kind of have those little notes occasionally pop out with harmonics. I don't think that's a planned thing. And continuing on in that phrase, the 12th fret on the 1st string, 15, 12 on the 2nd, the 3rd fret, the 15th fret on the 3rd string, back to 12 on the 2nd string, 15, 14, 12 on the 3rd string, 14, 12 on the 4th string, and then a pull-off, 14, 13, 12, and a slide down to 10 on the 5th string. So that's to 10, 12, 12 on the 5th and 6th string there at the end. And that leads into the 6th phrase. So for the 6th phrase, we're going to hammer from the 10th to the 12th fret on the 5th string. Play that twice. Back to 10 on the 5th string, 12 on the 6th, back to 10 on the 5th string, 10, 12 on the 5th, back to 12 on the 6th, 10 on the 5th, a slide from 12 to 14 on the 5th string, 12 on the 4th string, and then continuing, the 14th fret on the 4th string, 14th fret on the 5th string, 12, 12 on the 4th string, 14 on the 4th string, 12 on the 3rd, 14 on the 4th string, 12 on the 3rd, and then the 14th fret on the 3rd string to the 14th fret on the 4th string, the 12th fret on the 3rd string, and then sliding from the 14th to the 16th fret, up a whole step there on the 3rd string, playing the 15th fret on the 2nd string twice, and then back to the 16th fret of the 3rd string. So that's continuing the 15th fret on the 2nd string, and then sliding 16, back to 14, and back to 16 on the 3rd string, 15, 17 on the 2nd string, and then 15, 17 on the 1st string. When you get to the 17th fret on the 1st string, you're going to bend up a whole step 3 times. And then you're going to pick the 17th and 15th fret on the 1st string again, down to the 17th fret of the 2nd string, and then the 15th fret on the 1st string, sliding the 17 to the 15 on the 2nd string. So you got... And the very last phrase is going to start at the 12th fret of the 2nd string to the 15th fret of the 3rd, 12 on the 2nd string, 15 on the 3rd again, and 14, 12, 14 on the 3rd string, and then a slide from the 12th fret up a whole step to the 14th fret and back on that 3rd string. So that's for the very end. And that's the 2nd guitar solo for Sweet Home Alabama. The second tag comes right out of the extended guitar solo. I'm going to play the guitar one part in time. There's a few fills and then explain them slowly. So coming right out of that, you're just going to mute the strings and play on the offbeats. So this is in the first measure. You're just holding the strings without actually pushing them into the fretboard. You're going to play on the offbeat. So it's just like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and. And at that point, there's a little fill. That's the 7th fret on the 3rd string with the 1st finger. Then I'm bending the 10th fret up a whole step on the 2nd string. Back down to the 10th fret to the 8th fret on the 2nd string. So immediately after that, there's another fill, the 9th fret on the 3rd string, and then a slide from the 6th to the 7th fret on the 2nd string, down to the 7th fret on the 3rd, to the 7th fret of the 4th string. So you get, and then a slide back from the 7th to the 5th fret on the 4th string. And the very last fill is real cool. It's harmonics. This is actually my favorite part of the whole song, where he's actually playing the 7th fret of the 4th string to the 12th fret harmonic on the 2nd string. So you get A to B, and then G to C. That's the 5th fret harmonic on the 4th string to the 5th fret harmonic on the 3rd string. Like that, and he dives the bar down on that last note. So you get like that. And if you're not familiar with harmonics, you're just barely touching the string right over the fret. So we're at the 7th fret. My finger is actually not where I would normally be pressing the string. It's actually directly over the fret. Again, 7th fret on the 4th string, 12th fret on the 2nd string, 5th fret on the 4th string, 5th fret on the 3rd string, and a dive with the bar. So that's the 2nd tag for guitar 1 on Sweet Home Alabama.
In Birmingham, they love the governor. Ooh, we all did what we could do.
The 3rd verse is identical to the 2nd and 4th verse, with the exception that in the 2nd measure, when you're on the G chord, rather than staying on the G chord for the full measure, on beat 3 there's an F chord, and on beat 4 there's a C chord. So for Ed King's guitar part, he just plays a fill over those. It's a simple fill, so you're just playing the open 3rd string hammered to the 2nd fret, and then picking the 1st fret on the 2nd string. That would occur during the F chord. And then for the C chord on beat 4, you're going to hammer from the open 4th string to the 2nd fret, and pick the open 3rd string, so you get during that F, C kick. So the whole thing will sound like this. And that's the 3rd verse for the Ed King guitar part on Sweet Home Alabama.
Sweet home Alabama, where the skies are so blue.
The 3rd and 4th chorus are really the double chorus before the piano solo outro, and it's 16 bars long. It's broken up in 2 8-bar sections by a lead guitar fill that I'll explain after I play it. So it sounds like this. So, as you can see, I had to stop the rhythm at the end of the 8th measure there to play that little fill. The idea is I'm sliding the 2nd finger from the 7th to the 9th fret on the 3rd string, and then playing the 8th fret on the 2nd string back to the 9th fret on the 3rd, to the 10th fret on the 2nd string back to the 9th fret on the 3rd. So you get, and back to the 9th fret and back to the 8th fret on the 2nd string. So you get. Then moving back with the 3rd finger, I'm going to bend the 8th fret up a whole step. Bring it back down to the 8th fret, 2nd string, and end that fill with a F sharp and a D there on the 7th fret of the 2nd and 3rd string. So again. And the rest of it is really exactly the same as the choruses that we've had prior to this, with the exact same fills and everything. So that's the 3rd and 4th chorus for the Ed King guitar part on Sweet Home Alabama. This is the Guitar 1 performance of Sweet Home Alabama.
Turn it up. Turning, carry me home to see my kin, singing songs about the Southland. I miss old Bambi once again, and I think it's a sin. Yeah. Well, I heard Mr. Young sing about her. Well, I heard old Neil put her down. Well, I hope Neil Young will remember a Southern man don't need him around anyhow. Sweet home Alabama, where the skies are so blue. Sweet home Alabama, Lord, I'm coming home to you. In Birmingham, they love the governor. Ooh, and we all did what we could do. Now Watergate does not bother me. Does your conscience bother you? Tell the truth. Sweet home Alabama, where the skies are so blue. Sweet home Alabama, oh yeah. Lord, I'm coming home to you. Here I come, Alabama. Now Muscle Shoals has got the Swampers, and they've been known to pick a song or two. Lord, they get me off so much. They pick me up when I'm feeling blue. Now how about you? Sweet home Alabama, where the skies are so blue. Sweet home Alabama, Lord, I'm coming home to you. Sweet home Alabama, oh sweet home, where the skies are so blue and the governor's true. Sweet home Alabama, Lord, Lord, I'm coming home to you. Yeah, yeah.
Guitar 2 is going to be the heaviest of the three electric guitar sounds. And it's played on a Gibson Les Paul guitar, and there's one opening lick that one that is from the very intro of the song. You want to use the neck pickup for that sound. The rest of it is pretty much done with the bridge pickup. For all those kind of parts, you want to make sure it's not dirty enough that it kind of muddies up that sound. What I've got right now is just about as heavy as you'd want it to get, and for those kind of parts where you have the bigger riffs come in, you want to make sure you get a pretty rockin' sound on that. So with the bridge pickup on the Les Paul, I've got the gain channel on this amp. The gain over here, the drive is set pretty far up. The gain here is down a little bit. You just want to match them so that you get a pretty heavy sound, but not overwhelmingly overdriven. And then the treble's up, just cut through a little bit, mid-range and bass sort of in the center. Again, with EQs, it's all individual for the amp that you're using, so you really just have to use your ears for that. Try not to overwhelm the sound. With a Les Paul, it's pretty easy to get the bass too heavy. It's a pretty bass-heavy guitar to begin with. And the presence is up a little bit, and the rest are just volume controls for this amp, a little reverb. And that's Guitar 2, tone for Sweet Home Alabama. This is Sweet Home Alabama by Lynyrd Skynyrd. The song's in the key of D in standard tuning. And Guitar 2 is Gary Rossington's Les Paul. And the intro has two different parts to it. The first part is a little fill played with the neck pickup sound. So that starts with the 7th fret on the 4th string. And I'm going to slide my 3rd finger from the 9th back to the 7th fret and back up to the 9th fret on the 5th string. And then land on the 7th fret of the 3rd string. So you get... And then pull off from the 9th fret to the 7th fret on the 3rd string. So that starts on beat 4 of the 2nd measure. The next part is played with the bridge pickup, and this is really the part he's going to play through the verses throughout the song for the most part. I'm going to play it in time and then break it down. So that starts with the open 4th string. Played open, and then you're going to play the open 1st string and then the 3rd fret on the 2nd string. So that's like a D sus2 chord, sort of like a D chord with the 2nd finger lifted off, so you get the open 1st string. Then moving to the C add 9 chord, I'm going to play the 3rd fret on the 5th string with my 2nd finger, then pick the 2nd string, which is at the 3rd fret, and the open 1st string. So you're sort of alternating those notes that you play with the E, D at first, and then D, E the 2nd time. So it's like that. Then moving down to the G chord, I'm going to play the bass note on the 6th string at the 3rd fret, and then play the 3rd fret on the 1st string with my 4th finger, and then the 3rd fret on the 2nd string with my 3rd finger. So good. After that, you're going to slide the 3rd finger up to the 5th fret, and then play the 3rd fret on the 1st string with the 1st finger, pick the 1st string again, and slide back from the 5th to the 3rd fret on the 2nd string. So then back to the D chord again, same pattern as we had before, C, and into the G. And this time you're just alternating the 1st and 2nd string at the end there, so the whole thing. And that's the intro for Guitar 2 on Sweet Home Alabama.
Big wheels keep on turning, carry me home to see my kin.
For the first verse, Guitar 2 is going to play the same picking pattern that we had as the second part of the intro. So I'm just going to play it in time. You're really going to play this 2 times in a row, so it's going to be a total of 8 measures. So again, that's exactly the same as the part we had at the end of the intro. And that's the first verse for the second guitar on Sweet Home Alabama. both of the tags, guitar 2 is playing the same 4-measure pattern, and I'm going to play it in time and then break it down. And you can see that that was really a 2-measure pattern that gets played twice in a row. The 7th, 8th, and 9th fret on the 5th string to the 7th fret on strings 3 and 4, twice, and then down to the 9th fret. And that is basically the notes of a D chord. That is ultimately just a D chord right there. So and you could pick these notes, 7, 8, 9, or you could hammer them. Sounds to me like he's picking them. And down to the 5th and 7th fret for a similar pattern. 5, 7 on the 5th string, to the 5th fret on the 3rd and 4th strings, then down to the 7th fret. This is a C chord now. So we got, and you can notice in that one he's skipping that 6th fret, so he's not doing a chromatic pattern there. Instead of like that, he's just doing the 5th and 7th fret. Then down to the open 5th string, the open 1st and 2nd fret on the 5th string, and then the open 3rd and 4th string, and that's a G chord. So here's the D, C, G. Of course, following the progression of the song, at the very end of that, he goes up to the 12th fret and plays harmonics on strings 3 and 4. So that's just barely touching the string right over the 12th fret itself. And then picking them, you could pick the 3rd and 4th string, or you could even get the 2nd string in there too if you like. But play that twice in a row. So that's the both tags 1 and 2 for guitar 2 on Sweet Home Alabama.
Well, I heard Mr. Young sing about it. Well, I heard O'Neill put her down.
The 2nd and 4th verse for the 2nd guitar part are going to be the same part that you played on the 1st verse, the picking pattern. There's just a chorus lead-in riff that you're going to play in unison with the rest of the band. Like that. So I'll explain that now. That you're going to play the open 5th string, hammer to the 2nd fret of the 5th string, then the open 4th and open 3rd string, then pull off from the 2nd fret to the open 4th string, and then hammer from the open to the 2nd fret on the 5th string. So that's actually 16th notes, starting on beat 3 of the last measure. So the whole part sounds like this. And that's the 2nd and 4th verse for guitar 2 on Sweet Home Alabama.
Sweet Home Alabama, where the skies are so blue.
There are 4 choruses in the song, and they're almost identical. The 1st and 3rd choruses are the same, and the 2nd and 4th are pretty much the same. For guitar 2, I'm going to play choruses 1 and 3 in time, and then break it down for you. So that starts with a D power chord in 5th position. My first finger's on the 5th fret of the 5th string. My 3rd finger's on the 7th fret of the 4th string. And I'm really strumming, I'm aiming for the bottom strings, the lower strings, but I'm certainly not just hitting those two, the 4th and 5th string. So for that reason, it's critical with your left hand to mute the strings that you're not playing. You'll notice my first finger's barely touching the 6th string, and I've got the 3rd and 2nd and even the 1st string muted as well. So if I strum all the way across, I'm just getting the sound of those 2 strings. No other pitches. So you're going to strum down, down on the D chord, and then add the 4th finger on the 9th fret of the 4th string. Sort of a Chuck Berry style guitar part. And that's going to be down, 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 up, up. And you're just going to slide that back 2 frets for a C chord and play the exact same pattern. And that's really the first measure. Down to a G chord. So I've just moved the entire C chord down a string to strings 5 and 6. And so that second measure has a kind of a tricky accent to it. You're going to strum down, down on the G chord, and then lift the pressure off with your left hand, strum muted strings, come down on the 7th fret of the 5th string with the 4th finger, and I've got the 3rd fret on the 6th string as well, so that's... And then again with the muted strings, down, up, and come back down to the G chord, so you get down, 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 up, down, down, up, down. And the last beat of that measure, you're going to do a down strum in mutes and come up on a C chord on the 2nd, 16th note of B4. So that's... And then moving up to the 3rd measure, you're just going to play exactly what we did in the 1st measure. From the D chord to the C chord. In the 4th measure, you're going back to the G chord. Again, another specific kick here, but this one's a little simpler. You're just staying on the G chord. 2 down strums, mute, mute, back to the G chord, and then mute, and then come, actually mute twice, and come down on the C chord, on the end of beat 3, the offbeat after beat 3. So you get, and the end of beat 4. So that's down, 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 up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. And that takes you to measure 5. So now we're back on the D chord. Basically measures 5, 6, and 7 are going to be identical to measures 1, 2, and 3. You're just doing the exact same thing you did in the first 3 measures. And that takes you to measure 8. And you're just going to the G chord, down, down, mute, mute, down, to the F power chord, now at the 8th and 10th fret of the 5th and 4th string, and then down to the C power chord on beat 4. So that's on beats 3, 4 of the very last measure. And that's choruses 1 and 3 for guitar 2 on Sweet Home Alabama.
Sweet home Alabama, where the skies are so blue.
The 3rd verse for guitar 2 is going to be identical to verses 2 and 4 in terms of what you're playing. The only difference is that in the 2nd measure, there's a kick on beat 3 and beat 4, where you're going to play an F chord to a C chord, 3, 4 on those beats. So the F chord, I've got my first finger across the 1st fret on strings 1 and 2, my 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, my 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the 4th string. For F, to just a basic open C chord. So the whole part sounds like this. And that's the 3rd verse for guitar 2 on Sweet Home Alabama.
Sweet home Alabama, where the skies are so blue.
For the 2nd and 4th choruses, guitar 2 is just going to do exactly what it did in choruses 1 and 3. The only difference is we're not going to play the F and C chord at the very end in the 8th measure. You simply play through that measure with the G chord. So the whole thing will sound like this. So that's pretty self-explanatory if you've looked at the chorus 1 and 3 clip. It's exactly the same, just no F and C chord at the end. And that's chorus 2 and 4 for guitar 2 on Sweet Home Alabama.
Where the skies are so blue and the governor's true. Sweet home Alabama, Lord.
For the guitar solos in the outro, guitar 2 is going to play a similar part that we played on the choruses with the Chuck Berry style rhythm guitar. And for the first solo, for the first guitar solo, you're really playing it pretty straight. You're not going to kick up to that C chord after beat 4 as we do in the beginning of the chorus. So you can see we're just playing the same pattern on the G that we did on the D and the C. For the second guitar solo, as well as the outro piano solo, you are going to do the kick up to the C chord. So it's essentially the first two measures of the chorus. You can think of it that way. The first two measures of the chorus, just repeat it. It'll sound like this. And that repeats. So that's the solo sections for guitar 2 on Sweet Home Alabama. This is the guitar 2 performance of Sweet Home Alabama.
Turn it up. Big wheels keep on turning, carry me home to see my kin, singing songs about the Southland. I miss old Bambi once again, and I think it's a sin, yeah.